Sweet.
How you doing?
I'm good, man. Yeah, doing really well. How's yourself?
I'm doing really good. I woke up a little late for stream since so my son I usually take out to the bus, and today we weren't feeling it, so he didn't go to school. So my whole morning schedule is off. And I woke up
Ah,
late,
okay.
and I was like, shit, I need to get on because I need to get the stream all prepped for when you come on. I can't be late today. That's not a good day.
Well, you made it. You
Yeah.
made it.
Um, So how are you recovered from Vegas? You
Yeah, more or less. The jet lag took a fair while to get recovered from, and the hangover a little bit less so, but still a factor for sure.
that's good. That's good. How what number E Vegas was that for you? Like how many times?
That was my first eVegas.
Oh
Yeah.
really?
Yeah. So it was all new to me. I've been to a few different ones, more close to home. Like I've been to Amsterdam, which was awesome, and I've been to Event, which was really good. But yeah, this was my first Vegas, so it was awesome. It was huge event, really good.
That's awesome. That's really
Yeah,
cool.
and my
Um,
first time in Vegas as well. So
oh
that's
really?
a bit of a culture shock, or like
Wow.
sensory overload. No, it
Man,
was
I
crazy place.
man, that's really wish I would have asked you that there. That would have been we last year was Bjorn B. He's the other streamer.
Mm.
Bjorn B's first time in Vegas and first time E Vegas, and he was like, it's a lot. He's like, the city is a lot.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, man. Yeah, it's a lot to take in, especially when you're out on the strip. On like we arrived quite late on the first night, and so it was just like wandering around the strip, kind of like a little bit, dazed and confused from the whole thing. It was crazy.
Right. Um. So, but you made it. How'd you do? How was do you feel all the QAs went, the round tables, the event, all that stuff?
I think it was pretty good. Yeah, it was definitely like I felt like because I was there, and I'm as you may have mentioned earlier, like I'm a QA, so I wasn't like the number one person to talk to about a lot of things. Like I felt like definitely a bit of pressure going there and leading some of those roundtables, but I felt like they were super positive, like lots of good feedback, lots of cool little things coming into CCP Carker's little things. Roundtable, which was really cool. I think she's actually already done a few of those things since she's been back, which
I
is really
actually,
awesome. So you may
I
maybe hear about
actually,
that soon.
I actually tweeted her because someone in chat during when Rise was on last week asked about the whole overheating while gate cloak, like preheating,
Hmm.
um, and someone found the thread. Someone said that, or Rise said a dev actually posted on Twitter a while back asking for feedback, and I was like, "What?" So some nerd from chat went and found it, and it was actually Carker. So I was like, "You guys need to tweet Carker right now because this needs to happen yesterday." Um, so no, that the little things roundtable was really funny because I mean you were there. Like most of
Hmm.
the stuff people was not little things, and
Yeah,
having
yeah.
Carker go, no, 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 that's not little
Yeah,
thing.
it's always tough, and I think like it's that kind of idea of like understanding that it's just basically her doing changes and like me testing them. So if it like involves a designer or involves like anyone else that we have to bring into the conversation, like it pushes it out of scope, which is a shame. There's a lot of things that people want, but there's only so much you can do. Yeah. So it's always a funny roundtable of like, no, sorry, no, sorry, and then like the 10th one is like, oh yeah, that's a good idea. We can do that. Okay, next. No, sorry. No, sorry. Yeah.
I think you had the benefit of being since this is your first Vegas, people that only go to Vegas, they didn't know you were the bug testing guy, um, and
Mm.
they didn't know your maybe your area's expertise, um,
Hmm.
and are you going next year?
I don't know. It was a real good time. So I'll have to see. I think obviously next year with us like doing more things around the world
That's true.
instead of FanFest, there'll likely be a lot there may be more of us there for things like Vegas. So hopefully I get to go again. It was really cool.
It'll be good to see the contrast, like when people are more aware of like one what you look like, and then two like your area of expertise, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it was like night and day, the experience of being at Vegas, like before and after I did my presentation, my keynote presentation, like the Upwell Structure one. Like
Oh,
suddenly
right.
everyone knew who I was after that. Yeah.
Even
But,
Rise said that Fozzy not going increased pressure on him because usually
mm,
Fozzie's the lightning rod for hate. All the nerds flock to, and so and Rise just enjoys. He's like, whatever, I'm just hanging out. And then Fozzie
yeah.
didn't go, so Rise is like, all these nerds are coming up to me.
Yeah,
So
yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
I'm
he asked me to come and be on the round table with him because he was like, it's just going to be me up there. There's like a bunch of stuff that I can talk about, but like I can't talk about like structure balance or anything like that. So if
right.
you want to like stand in for Fozzie and come to that, and yeah, I think that one went really well as well.
Yeah, it did. And like I'm the one who came up to you. I think beforehand I was like, oh, thank you for going with Rise because like he's pretty hungover. And he just needs a friend up there. He just needs
Yeah,
a friend up there.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Looked like he needed a hug
Yeah,
for sure.
but it turned out that round table turned out to be really good. Like as soon as he set like the tone of like, look, we're just not gonna do the whole shit posting thing. It's gonna be fine.
No,
So
and I think that like the like Eve meetups in general, every time I've been, it's just been like a really awesome experience. Like it's so much better to be able to like stand face to face with someone and like talk through problems. Like the internet tends to have that problem of like everything's really polarized. Like it's either like all the extremes on either end bubble to the top. So like being able to just stand with someone, have a beer, and like talk as people and like talk through problems and try and like work out what the best solution is together. Like it's so much better, and it like really, I like think like every dev who gets to go to these things ends up like super energized by it because it's like you end up having these really productive conversations. You end up like meeting the people behind the screen. Like it's, and I hope it's the same the other way around. I think I hear that a lot from players, like that it was like super like a super good experience to actually talk to the devs face to face.
yeah, that's what I tell people when I talk about eVegas and I come back and I do like the post Vegas stream. That's kind of what I focus on. I was like, look, it's really it's really cool like to be in Vegas and whatever and have a bunch of like-minded nerds or some like-minded nerds
Mm.
to hang out in Vegas. But it's really cool to hang out with the devs in that like kind of low key setting where they're not like they're not under super scrutiny, like they're not on a live stream, like on a CCP official live stream, like and have to be kind of watch exactly what they say on the live stream.
Mm.
Having a bunch of like more laid back just scenarios, um, and kind of like the free flowing thinking, like like one of the ideas on Sunday night I went. It was me, Johnny Splunk, who streams on E Scout under E
Mm.
Scout. There's like 3-4 nerds, and then we went to dinner with Briss Gruball,
Hmm.
Karker, and Rise, and the whole walk over there, we were just kind of BSing and throwing out like Briss threw out an idea like you should turn all of LowSec into no capitals, like only subcaps allowed in LowSec, and so it was really nice to like be able to go back and forth like, oh, what would happen to the ecosystem if like how would PvP evolve in LowSec if
Mm.
there was only, and all these hypotheticals, right? Of course,
Hmm.
like Rise, like, yeah, how do we move all the capitals and all the the
Right.
nerds
Yeah.
getting mad about their titans in LowSec, blah blah blah. But like, it was just cool to kind of think about those hypotheticals,
Hmm.
and kind of just talk about those kind of weird scenarios, right? Um,
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
So yeah, I encourage everyone, including Orlowski, to go to Vegas next year. We had a record-breaking Vegas, right? Guard said it was by far. It
Yeah, I
was
think
like
so. Yeah.
I think Guard or Falcon said it was like 14% growth over last year,
Wow.
which is just like that's a huge number for year-to-year growth.
Mm.
Like, that's a big number. Like so. Um,
Yeah. And there's a bunch of other ones as well. Like they're not obviously we can't always attend them all, but there's like is it evemeets.com where you can like find local ones. There's lots of
is
like
that a
little
thing?
small.
Eve?
Yeah. I think I'm gonna look it up as well.
What? Oh my god,
Yeah.
evemeet.net.
Ah, that's it. Okay, yeah, and so like people can put up events there, and they can like so you can like see what's going on nearby. It's really cool, and there's like loads of those little like tiny, events that are maybe just 20 people, 30 people. Like I've been to Eve Glasgow before, which is covered because it's my neck of the woods. So yeah, it's awesome for that. There's loads like you can go in here and be like, oh, there's a meeting down the road.
That's awesome. I never knew this was a thing.
Yeah, it's so cool.
Yeah, I would. Yeah, because a bunch of like Portland nerds were talking about having a meetup, and of course like Rise like, yeah, I'm Portland, I'll go. Like,
Yeah.
that's really cool. I will share this. That's really cool.
Yeah,
All right.
it's totally awesome.
So, what you ready to get into some of these questions? So,
Let's do it.
all right,
Yeah.
I have some prep for some ones that people like couldn't either knew they wouldn't be here for or whatever, and then hopefully chat will come up with some extra. So, first one, multiple jump clones in a single citadel. What is that? Is that possible? Is that
It's let me think. So I think it would be something that would be feasible. I think it would take it's probably something that would take a bit of implementation to do because you're like breaking an old paradigm of how many you can have. But yeah, I think I've heard it. I've heard it discussed before, for sure. I think it would be. It sounds like a really cool quality of life thing for sure for people who want to use lots of clones for different purposes. Yeah, for sure.
With Abyssal stuff, because a bunch, some of the tier 5 Abyssal stuff takes a clone, a specific clone to run.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I don't think it's something that's like. It's not something that's on like Team 5.0's roadmap at the moment, and maybe I should just quickly explain where I am in CCP. Like I work on Team 5.0, so it's like mostly structure stuff recently, but also things like in the past we did kind of like deployables. We did some of the Sov rework. We've done things like Thera and the Shattered Wormholes. That was us. There's like a bunch of things, but in the recent years it's been lots of structure work. I think it's something that came up a fair bit when talking about structures as kind of like a perk that structures could have. They could have multiple clones in the same bay. But yeah, like it's something that I think is like on our list of things that would be nice, but it's not something that's coming anytime like immediately soon for sure.
All right. But there's no like big tech limitation, right?
I wouldn't want to say for sure. I don't believe that there is, but if I was to answer on instinct, I would suspect that one clone per station is probably one of those like old school things deep down in the code that we'd have to go and dig out and like change.
Code, we all get it.
Yep. But yeah, no, I don't think there's it doesn't sound like there'll be any like huge problem about that. It's just whether we can get the time to do that specific thing.
Cool. That's good. So you've worked on wormholes. But you said your main interest as a player is also wormholes. Because that's what you do on your player account.
Absolutely, yeah. So I think I started playing in 2012, late 2012, I think it was 2011 maybe, and like did some high sec stuff, did some mucking about in low sec, and then like a bunch of my mates were like, oh, let's try this wormhole thing. and I think my friend had already like set up a pause there, and it was one of the things where like a bunch of my mates we mucked around in wormholes for a few months, and then like we just kind of never went back. Like the rest of space felt like just less scary in comparison.
Yeah.
It was like, so yeah, it kind of hooked me, and like as you mentioned before, just before I came on, we have the option of having our own like anonymous accounts. I think everyone has them by standards, and like different people play more, different people play less, of course. But yeah, so everyone tends to go through like phases of playing like all the time, or like taking a month off or something, as players do as well. But whenever I'm playing in wormhole space for sure. That's my jam.
Awesome. Yeah, when talking to a dev at Vegas, he threw out, he didn't have like numbers, but he's like, wormholes are some of our biggest and best customers.
Right. Yeah. I
Because,
think that's right.
like, one, as soon as you get serious about a wormhole, you're like, okay, let me sub 3 accounts.
Yeah. At the very least, you need 2, but
Yeah.
probably way more. Yeah.
He's like, we don't want to ignore you. Like, we understand, we want to, take care of you. It's just hard because not a lot of us, do wormholes, and it seems to be this own like ecosystem where we just leave it alone.
It's a real wormholes as always are like a special snowflake for sure, and it's like it's a tough one, right? Because it's so weird and wonderful, things that we do elsewhere feel like they often have like a bigger chance of negatively affecting something in wormhole space that we're like always like trying to not do.
Right.
That's the last thing you want to do is muck up someone's gameplay by fixing something else.
Right.
And then also it's just one of those things where like there's a big list of things we want to get to. Wormhole stuff is often on that list, but it's not always at the top, which I hope people can always understand. But yeah, it's a tough one. I know I hear a lot this idea that, oh, when was the last time CCB did something for wormholes? And for me, like, it's like I absolutely take their point. Like it's been a while since something specific has happened for wormhole space. But I mean, me as someone who lives in wormholes, like, oh man, I think back to the days before I had an Upwell structure with a clone bay and stuff, and like all that stuff. Oh, it feels like the dark ages now. Like, so there's a lot of stuff that has improved in wormhole space over the last few years. It's just that it hasn't been for wormholes specifically, which I get. Like, I get people's frustration there. But yeah, oh man, Upwell structures made things so much easier in so many ways.
Yeah,
Like,
and Calcular, who's actually from Balmer's Bar, but they base out
Mhm.
Wormhole, is all on board with the multiple clones idea,
Mhm.
especially for wormholes, right? Because like in HiSec or in Null, like you have a bunch of structures already, like moon mining and
Yeah.
stuff like that, where you can throw up clones. But if you're just in a wormhole and you're not moon mining or whatever, then you just have to set up a spare Astra house, be like, okay, this is for clones. And
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
no other reason.
Yeah, and if it's just for that reason and nothing else, then that definitely doesn't feel like good gameplay, right? Like,
Right.
it's like literally just our clone house. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you said, can you give hints on anything like that you would like to do for wormholes? That just like
Yeah.
doesn't make it onto the list, or
Yeah, I mean, and again, this is definitely me talking like from a personal perspective, not as something I as a dev can necessarily do myself. Although, as you can imagine, yeah, a big disclaimer. Although, as you can imagine, like when I do get the chance to like champion these things, it's often at the top of my list of things like, oh, can we do this? I mean, personally, I feel like the balancing of like ISK efficiency, or like ISK per minute or whatever across the different classes of wormholes is pretty out of whack. There are like certain classes that you make incredible money per minute running sites, and some of them that are just like super lacking. So that like curve of like payout over the different difficulties feels like pretty off. That's one that I definitely would, if I had the choice, would want to hit. Just maybe, do some like little things like, bringing in some of the ranges on some of the sleepers, and maybe adjusting the payouts in different places if we could. That's definitely one that I'd love to hit. From a QA perspective, like there's a bunch of like old school wormhole bugs that like still plague me to this day. Those kind of things, like occasionally wormholes will collapse weirdly and they'll end up putting you somewhere else in the system, or we've had a couple of cases of wormholes that are like that get broken and like lead to two places, or static wormholes like spawning in the same place but going somewhere else, stuff like that like they're really hard to like nail down as a tester, because the system's quite old, as you can imagine, legacy code of course again. So there's like things there that I've reported years ago, or like I see people bug reporting, and I just would love to get time to fix some of those, but they tend to be quite elusive. So some of those things I definitely like to hit.
I really like the idea of you as a player bug reporting something like years before, and then you becoming the dev, and then like, I'm gonna fix this. Because Ryan's the same way. He's like, I'm gonna delete ECM. This is done. He's like, it's 6 years later and I haven't deleted it.
Man, sometimes when we'll be playing like a bunch of devs playing, and one of us notices something, instead of like writing a note on a post-it or like emailing or whatever, it's just easier to just write a bug report to yourself. So sometimes I'll just like pop up the bug report window and just be like, for Lebowski, like remember to do this on Monday, like that kind of thing. This is just easier, and it'll just pop up in my like filters at work when I get in. I'm like, oh yeah, that was from me. But that happens sometimes for sure. So yeah, like things like that for wormholes I'd love to hit. Like I'm sure that I definitely think that the changes we made to capital escalations a while back, where we introduced the drifter boss, I feel like they didn't really hit the mark in the way that we wanted them to. I think there was an intention there to kind of use the new AI to kind of really kind of increase the spooky scariness of what drifters and what sleepers could potentially be. And in reality, it just very quickly became like a thing that you could farm with a structure. And that was something that was kind of like a limitation of the new AI, not like a permanent limitation, but just in terms of where the new AI was at that point, it was a limitation. I'd love to come back and do a pass over that at some point, maybe make them a bit more clever about structures, and basically just do a balance on the drifter boss in general, because it's I personally don't think it's hitting the goals as well as we'd like. But generally, I think wormholes are they're in an okay place. They're not like hemorrhaging in any like crazy scary way. So it's why they often end up not being like our highest priority, because it's not like the thing that we need to fix because it's super broken. It's just like they're in that middle point of like they're okay, they're kind of broken. Yeah, so it's
wormholers as players are very quick at adapting to like buggy gameplay, right? If their wormhole, like if half 100-man fleet jumps through a wormhole and half end up in a different location, like they just automatically go into, okay, like let's jump back in and start and re-roll the hole so that we can, fix this or stuff like that.
Yeah.
I think they're
Absolutely.
way more like agile at dealing with those things than
like a bit more resilient to that kind of stuff, just because of the nature of the space. Calcul is mentioning they're making sites respawn quicker as well. That's one that has always bugged me for a while, this idea. The problem of things getting stuck in inactive systems is a real big one for wormholes. If a system doesn't end up like getting anyone in it over 24 hours between downtimes, then the sites there can sometimes like not respawn and move on. So it means that you can end up with these systems that like pile up with sites, and that's kind of cool to some extent because you can get that kind of like you roll into a wormhole and it's like bam, payday.
Right.
That's certainly like a cool feeling that I don't think we would want to remove that kind of feeling of hitting the jackpot, but at the same time it means that like you just get systems if you're living in a system, you can sometimes just get no sites for like so long. It's like a drought of content, like PvE content, and
Right.
that's definitely something I'd want to hit if I could. Like find a balance between the two, where you always kind of have like you have a consistent PvE like flow of PvE, but there's also that idea that you could hit like a jackpot payday when you find a wormhole that's still got like a bunch of sites in it or something. That would be pretty cool.
Yeah, that sounds really cool. While not, right, like not affecting your own personal, like wormhole, farming.
Yeah, exactly. You want a bit of both, I think, and I think the balance there is a little bit off. And I think sometimes some of that's just the nature of the distribution system that we use for these things, which could definitely use some love. Yeah.
Itchy has a question. What can be done from a dev perspective to help increase the population of wormhole space?
Interesting. I mean, there's like at the super extremes, there's like the kind of, and I'm not saying this seriously, but at the super extreme, there's like reduce the amount of wormhole systems, like to kind of like increase density of players. I think like for me, as an actual serious response, like making each class of wormholes have an appeal. To different like levels of players, so having that idea of and it's coming back to that idea of making sure that the difficulty and payout scale across all the wormholes is like is consistent, so there's like a place for everyone. If you're like a small group of people, you can like there's a wormhole size for you, and if you're like a huge group, there's a wormhole size for you. Yeah, I think that would be my main one. It's a tough one, right? Because I think wormholes, because of the fact that you don't have things like local, it's hard to see the general like population count of wormholes. They suffer from that thing where it kind of what's the word? If people think there's no content in wormholes, then it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? Like because if you it's like there's no one here, so I'm not going to live in wormholes. So now there's less people here, so now I'm not going to live in wormholes. It kind of it just adds up after a while. I think that, as far as I recall, and I wouldn't want to say for certain, but I believe the population of wormholes has been pretty steady for a good while now. It's holding steady, consistent with the kind of the population of EVE in general. It has taken some kind of slow dips, I think, over the past like few years, but it's generally pretty steady now. But I would personally love it if there was more. But it's a tough one, right? Because like it is by definition like a high barrier of entry area of space, right? You need to be able to scan. You need to not just that you need to have the skills to scan, but you need to be happy with that being a big part of your daily gameplay, right? So it's like a niche area in a niche game. So it's always gonna like have a lower population. But yeah, I think things like making sure there's a place for everyone, continuing to make like quality of life stuff, and making sure that whenever we add things that they have a place in wormhole space and they're like appealing and they have like value in wormhole space will be the main things for me.
I know you got asked this at Vegas, but for the people who weren't here, raising limit on Corp bookmarks and Alliance bookmarks when?
Yes, so our 5.0's personal supply of like things that we're not allowed to open and drink until we do Alliance bookmarks is like slowly growing. We have like a bottle of vodka, we have a few other things that people have given us, and like you're not allowed to drink this until you do Alliance bookmarks. Yeah, I would personally love to do both of these things. I think so we talked about this bit at Vegas, like you said. Corp bookmarks it has a few concerns in terms of server load and the performance of the UI, neither of which are like unsurmountable, but it's definitely not a question of being able to simply change a number and not worry about the effects. Every time we update it can exponentially increase the load and the UI problems that can come from that. That being said, we have upped it in the past, and we'll likely look at that again, and we'll likely at some point up it a bit again. It's definitely problematic because if we up it by 200 within 10 minutes, people will be hitting that cap.
Right.
And it's just a question of how quickly you delete bookmarks. I'd love to do things like be able to have bookmarks expire.
Yes.
Personally, I think that would be something that would be great, especially for wormholes, where you could just be like, at downtime in 2 days, just kill this bookmark. That kind of thing. It making sure that it didn't, again, affect performance on the server.
Right.
So yeah, like I think there's definitely a good chance that at some point we will up quote bookmarks again, and I'd personally love to do a pass on bookmarks in general and allow more kind of customization and options for those. And then Alliance bookmarks. Alliance bookmarks is one thing that 5.0 have definitely wanted to do for a long while. We kind of have held off on it for a long while because we've always been intending to take a kind of like a deep pass and a rework of the corp system in general and the Alliance system, because as you know, it's super old. It's something that we've been so close to doing quite a few times. I mean, I've been here. I've been working at CCP for a little over 5 years, and it was definitely something we talked about in those first few months when I arrived, and it's something that we continue to come back to. It's a big task, and it often gets pushed back because we have other higher priority things to do. So Alliance bookmarks has, for a long while, has kind of fell into that category where it's like we'll do them when we hit when we rework corps and alliances. But I think realistically, I would personally love to like reassess that because it's something that I think has a lot of value on its own that doesn't require us to rethink the corp system at the same time. So yeah, I'd love to. It's on my list for next year, but whether we have the time to hit that priority, hit that in and where it stacks up in the priority order is the big question. But absolutely, I'd love to do Alliance bookmarks. It's something that is just required, I think.
Are you Union Pivo asked about the number of save fittings, upping the number of save fittings? I don't know if that falls under.
Yeah, I actually don't know about that one, whether it comes to server performance and stuff. I'll ask Carker about it. Thanks for the poke on that one. It may be something that we could. It may be something that falls prey to the same concerns, but it also may be something that's a bit easier to do. But I'll definitely ask Carker about that.
Let's see. Oh, are there any plans for a random wormhole generator, or a generator either inside like K-Space to generate a wormhole, or inside a wormhole to generate an exit?
Interesting. No plans in the immediate future, I would say. It sounds like an exciting idea for sure. One thing that's probably that I personally have a problem with as a player rather than a developer, that is probably a bit controversial, is the idea that you can still lock yourself in a wormhole with almost perfect safety. So you can like crash close all your wormholes, and then you can like not warp to the new signatures.
Right.
Meaning that the only way someone can get to you is if they roll into your wormhole from outside with so you get a K162 in your wormhole, and even then you can like warp off grid as soon as you see a new signature. So like, right. I'd love to like mess with that idea, like fix that problem. And then also I do kind of like the idea that if someone is specifically looking to have a wormhole where they just want to open their wormhole up, like they want a wormhole where they have a billion connections, they want essentially a wormhole that's super dangerous, but right. also like affords them a super amount of options. then that's like, it could be a cool idea. Obviously, it comes with the downside of that, of like maybe it would feel like really oppressive for people who don't want that, people who want to live in a peaceful system and not get bothered that much. But yeah, I think there's like it's an interesting idea. I think something like that would be a way to more safely kind of guarantee that they could find content, which may be a factor encouraging people to like live in wormholes more. But it would have to come with some sort of downsides, I think, so that it couldn't be just super oppressive for the poor little like farmer guy who just wants to go out and shoot sleepers. As always, it's about finding that balance, right?
Yeah. Let's. Are you doing the war deck as well? The war deck stuff?
Yeah, that's us. So if you've got any questions on Wardex, I'm happy to try and answer.
Okay. Itchy asked, Itchy asked, now that the new the Wardex system might be getting an overhaul, would this be a good time to tie in Corp Alliance changes, coalition changes into
the same kind of package? I personally, I think so. I've definitely brought it up in the last month or so when we've been talking about this more. It's one of those times where like we're probably going to have to touch the Corp system in some way, because wars are so like tied in with that stuff. So there may be a chance to, like, while we're in that code, do some other changes. I obviously wouldn't promise anything at this point, but it's something that we've been definitely talking about. I think the Corp rework, basically I think that the war deck changes, the big war deck changes that we're planning for next year, they definitely can't wait for a full Corp redesign, put it that way, right? But there definitely could be a potential for some of those things to go hand in hand. It's one of those things, right? Like I think we would all agree that war decks right now are more broken than the Corp system is, so we wouldn't want to slow down the changes to war decks just so that we could also do like extensive changes to Corps. But there's definitely
at Vegas were crazy.
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of those things. I think I mentioned it in my talk. This idea of like, Wardex has been like right pretty much at the top of like so many developers' lists as like, here's something that we should try and fix because it's broken. And I think even the most cynical of us were like mildly surprised by how bad the problem was. It was like kind of like we knew it was that bad, and the numbers we had before like kind of illustrated that. But seeing it so starkly laid out, you're just like, wow, this is unsustainable. And it's just, I think it's like, Wardex are one of those things where like there's not many people that are really benefiting in terms of enjoyment and like enjoying the game from the system in the way that it currently is. Like,
right.
It's almost entirely a net negative to the game as a whole. And just, it's always sad to think that people are being pushed out by that kind of stuff.
Is there a discussion place or area that we can add suggestions for you all to view or hash over, other than the string on the forums?
It's the forums are probably the best place, the best forum we have for it now. The best place for that. Personally, I would love to have something where we could like curate a list of ideas that people could like talk about how they would prioritize ideas. So we could like pick a bunch of things that we think would be roughly equivalent in size, and then we say, vote on this list of what you think is the best thing to do. Right now the forums are the best place for that. We do try and read it, and I know I don't spend much time in the features and suggestions place because, as you might imagine, I'm more in the kind of like test server feedback and those kind of things. But that is the best place to put things for now, for sure.
So I just posted in chat, we're gonna start wrapping up. I don't want to keep you too long. This is about how long I want to keep you, but if you're okay with another like 5 minutes.
Yeah, 5 or 10 minutes will be totally fine, don't worry.
Okay, cool. Yeah, go ahead.
I just saw Union Pivo saying, how come that someone just looked at this now and not before? So yeah, it wasn't something that we'd not looked at before. It's just that over the last year or so, we've been really developing our analytics team. So while developers had looked at this previously and we had a good idea of the general problems with the system, we didn't have this level of detail until we had the kind of the data analysis team that we have right now. They're awesome. As people know, people definitely know CCP Larrikin. He moved out to that team this year, and they're just like they're doing really really sweet work, and they're giving us like insights that we never had to this depth before. So yeah, we definitely had a lot of this data. It just wasn't quite as detailed as we have now.
Are bounties getting looked at?
We're talking here about the like bounty hunting rather than like NPC bounties, right? I imagine.
Correct.
Because this is Wingspan's suggestions.
Yeah.
Oh man, bounties. I think I just arrived at the company when we did the last rework of bounties, and that was basically just to fix the fact that the system was completely useless before, because you could just easily just get your mate to shoot you and get the bounty. So like the system was basically like a negative effect before, and now it's definitely better. It's one of those really really tough systems to properly balance in a sandbox game where people can double cross and talk outside the client, and it's really hard to kind of balance that properly. I think I read a lot of Wingspan's suggestions, and I've seen a few other really cool suggestions about having bounty structures and having this idea of one that I personally quite like was the idea that you would go and request a bounty and you would get like a randomized bounty, and things like that. Yeah, I think there's some really cool things that it's not on 5.0's roadmap in the immediate future, but it definitely is something that we're not. I don't think we're super happy with. It's one of those features where it's like it sort of has to exist in some form, because it's just like a thing that people always would want in a game like EVE. You want to be able to like use your financial might to like get back at someone that messed you up. But it's yeah, I don't think it's a super perfect system at the moment, for sure.
Ask Lebowski how much he hates Body/Tallulah Legion.
I'm not going to comment on that. Not at all.
Is that not even pre CCP era or what?
No. I don't think. I hope no one knows about my identity. I think there's like one person that knows about my identity pre CCP. But yeah, no.
Ask him how he likes his fermented whale sandwich. What?
Oh man, I'm so proud of myself that I've managed to never eat the fermented shark that they have here. I quickly realized that it's basically something that is it's either very old people eat it on toast, or they trick tourists with it. That's like the only two use cases for the fermented shark.
So I have one last question. So, and this is more like addressed to the feelings. We're not big on feelings on this channel, but so the feeling of us bug reporting stuff like on Sissy or stuff like that, and bugs that maybe make it from Sissy to TQ. Can you? It just like it feels bad, right? Because
yeah, absolutely.
You're like, oh, I found this and I recreated it, and you nerds still didn't fix it, kind of thing. That's
yeah.
Can you talk maybe about?
I think absolutely. Because this is like something that's definitely close to my heart. So I think the first thing to say is that so with bug reporting, we obviously get a lot of bug reports. There's a lot of people out there that are great for reporting things. With Tranquility, I think we hit something like 80 to 90% of the bug reports reported in any release. But for CC, we will attempt to process everything that gets reported on CC in the lead up to a release. And I think our efficiency on that is normally pretty good. So as a QA team, if you're reporting something on CC, we will see it, and unless it's like something that we can't reproduce, it will get turned into like an internal bug report in our system, and it will get to the developers that need to fix it. Beyond that point, it's tough for us as QA to have a huge amount of control over that. Obviously, we can like raise the priority of things and really like champion a fix, but sometimes it just comes down to the amount of time to release and whether a bug is bad enough to delay a release. So like as you can imagine, delaying a release is like, you know, it's something that we definitely do when we really need to, but it's like stopping a train, right? There's like a bunch of other moving parts that we don't control, so it's not always you know, on the feature team's like level to be able to say we need to stop this release for this one bug. So the main thing I would say was, please don't be disheartened about like reporting bugs on CC. We look at them, and we look at almost every single one of them that comes in from Singularity. We really appreciate it. It's just sometimes, you know, it's a question of, do we fix this, or do we delay the release, or do we go with this thing broken here and fix it as soon as we can afterwards? And those decisions are, like I say, are not always in our hands, but we do super appreciate bug reports. One thing I should quickly mention as well is that we would love to be able to get two-way communication into our bug report system, so that we can respond to your bug reports, and the responses would go in, like you would see them in client, like you would get a notification, or you would get something that you can look at your bug report in client. That would be amazing. Right now, what you have to do is, for people who don't know this, is you can go to the website and you can look at your bug reports, and you can see whether they're attached to things, whether they've been closed, whether we've asked for more information. We'd love to be able to just talk to you directly in client about that, and right now that functionality doesn't exist, but we're still pushing for it. But yeah, do make sure that you look at that page after you've submitted a bug report. Give it a refresh every so often, because we often like reply to ask questions if we don't know exactly what the problem is. We ask for more information, and that can be really useful for us.
Awesome. Well, I'm not gonna keep you any longer. Thank you so much for coming out.
Man, thanks for having me.
I would like to do these every like couple months. They probably get a little shorter in duration because, one, there won't be the whole introduction period, and you know, kind of get a better feel. So if you're down, you know, I'll probably hit you up in you know, probably like 6 weeks, or maybe after like the next big release or something like that.
No problem at all, man. Yeah, it's really great to talk to you. Thanks for everyone for watching and for all your bug reports and such, and I'm sure I'll talk to you guys again in a while.
Everyone give Lebowski the love. Remember to follow on Twitter, link to Twitter, and you have a good one.
Yeah, thanks dude. See you, everyone.